I'm Kaylee Evans. Welcome to my channel, Social Care Connections. I hope you enjoy the video. Hi, so I'm Kaylee, social worker in the UK. I asked you to come and speak to me because I know that you've shown some interest in the videos that I was doing on social pedagogy and social work. And I was just interested in your perspective and very excited that it's bringing an international perspective to what we're doing as well. So do you want to tell me a bit about you and what you're doing?
I'm Kara O'Neill. I'm a PhD student in Germany, obviously by the accent, from the United States. So I currently am living in Germany, but I did learn what I know about social pedagogy, and I have a master's from the United States, from Arizona State University, and I'm currently the co-president of what we call the Social Pedagogy Association in the United States, which began as the intention was to sort of educate, bring awareness just to what social pedagogy was, and to offer a professional networking kind of outlet, place where professionals in the United States could come together. And as quickly as we began it, we kind of garnered 17 international partners and realized that this was something much bigger than what we had anticipated that it would be. So these 17 partners from around the world, we've got partners in Japan and in Korea, all over Europe, of course. So all of these partners came together, and we put together a few years ago, 2018, the first International Social Pedagogy Conference. And we all went to Mexico. We had a lovely time in Puebla, and we kind of learned very quickly that this was a much larger need for a gathering of social pedagogues and kind of a unification, maybe not a unification, but an understanding between cultures and between disciplines as to how we enact social pedagogy, what we define it as, and how it works within our different practices in our variety of countries. So we sort of shifted from the professional organization into this idea of an international kind of association that we're currently building slowly. Of course, I can't say we, as the US, we are all 17 of us and then some. Now we have a few more partners coming in that are working to kind of build this association, and then the Social Pedagogy Association will again kind of draw back and try to build professional bridges in the United States and probably the US, Mexico, kind of a North American association rather than a US centric, but that's sort of my role in social pedagogy at the moment.
Gosh, it's just amazing the way that everyone's come together in a unified approach like that, and it just shows how impactful like an idea and people getting together in a small way can then become massive, really.
Yeah, it was very exciting, a little daunting, but very exciting.
I can imagine it's just beyond belief and comprehension, really, that can happen. But it's fantastic, and just to tell you about myself, like I haven't been trained in social pedagogy, but I was studying my master's, and I met Ali Gardner that was leading on the safeguarding course I was training, and she told me that I was a social pedagogue, and before that I hadn't really understood what it was, and since then I've just been so interested in learning more and seeing the connections between that and social work practice. And I think that the main thing really is, I think a lot of the time people say social work's full of policies and procedures and a lot of bureaucracy. And I just liked the fact that it was a really clear guidance around reclaiming practice and making sure, like, even though you're working within these structures, it's about why you came into social work and what really you're trying to do, and a lot about like use of self. And I do feel like the direction of the law and everything that we're trying to work towards in social work sort of aligns with that. It's just that, you know, the main principles of it, like promoting well-being and in social work, but then I could see the links between that and Haltung and, you know, all of the sort of things that I was learning about using yourself and connecting in real relationships with people. And it kind of just gave me confidence in my approach, really, that I was doing the right thing. Because sometimes people will say things to me like, oh, well, you're getting too involved, or you're spending too much time doing this, or and, you know, like working with other professionals, and they'd say, you're asking him to run before he can walk. Like, we need to focus on the absolute essential things with the physical well-being. And it's like, well, no, because if people don't have meaning in their life and they're not engaged in things, it's like, you know, people need happiness and like fulfillment. There's more to life than just basic needs, and I just feel so passionate about that, and I just wondered what you thought about that.
Well, there are so many studies now that back exactly that up in the field of psychiatry, actually. So I began in social work in my years past in my undergrad, and I had the same kind of issues. I didn't like the bureaucracy. I didn't like the very staunch, and this was in the US. So I think it's interesting to hear how you're saying the same in the UK as I'm saying in the US, but it was very bureaucratic. It was very, you must meet the check boxes, and then you're done with that. They call them clients. You're done with that client, which I also kind of catches me in the heart a little bit. So, meet the check boxes and you're done with that client. And I moved from that into behavioral psychology. And that was such a wonderful move for me, because you then move into this area, because we didn't have social pedagogy in the US, where you start to study exactly what you're saying, that you cannot have well-being without emotional and mental health also. So this concept of you must meet the well-being, and then you've checked the box and you've moved out, of course it's impossible. If you haven't given somebody emotional and mental well-being, you cannot ensure their physical well-being, because your body cannot be physically well if its needs are not being met on all levels. And Maslow's hierarchy is wonderful, but there is maybe some room for reevaluation that he wasn't privy to. And I think social work is still, at least in the United States, of course I can't speak for UK, I wasn't trained in the UK, but it's still very closely related to these Maslowian ideas of the hierarchy of needs. And again, they're not wrong, but they definitely need some reevaluation. And we're missing a philosophy of well-being. A very practical application of well-being includes this empowerment of mind, not just of body. And in social work now, that's where we need social pedagogy, because we are really missing that link.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think that the research in psychology absolutely supports what you're saying. We definitely need to be reaching a little deeper maybe into the well-being, and what is well-being, what does well-being mean, and how can we produce it.
Definitely, because I work with health professionals, so I'm in a team, and there are wellbeing workers, but I feel that there's a bit of disconnect between what the whole team does and the real value of the wellbeing workers as well. I think it's just really putting emphasis on how important that role is in everything that we do. I think it's interesting, and I think before this conversation we spoke about how really I suppose it is the philosophy that I'm interested in. But if that could then be transferred into practical things. But I liked the 3 Ps. I felt like that into social work just fits so well. What I find interesting about that is it's like you can bring aspects of yourself to practice, but it's about doing it in a professional way and maintaining boundaries around it. So I feel like maybe we need more specific training around that and how that actually looks in practice.
It's really struck Wednesday night by the Mandela model. Mm-hmm. And I started immediately putting that Mandela model into the Thimpra tree of social pedagogy, which is a really well, if you go on the website, you can find it for anybody that's watching. And when I'm looking here, I'm looking at the tree now. But I'm looking at this tree, and I had kind of scratched out the Mandela model when I was hearing about it at there's a Social Work Student Connect that you spoke at? Yes. So the other speaker went in and started speaking about the Mandela model, and it had this concepts of making time for people and acknowledging where they're come from and looking at their needs, and acknowledging our differences between us, and all of these things in this model. I started kind of looking at the Thimpra tree, and that's really when kind of the thought, like, yes, we've always kind of acknowledged that social pedagogy is a little bit of a philosophy, but I think it's been very professionalized in a lot of countries. But because it is not a profession in the United States, we've had this ability to step back and look at this as a philosophy of work. So it's almost that our Haltung, have you defined Haltung on here before? I think you have. I believe you have.
Well, you go ahead and do that if you want.
Well, I think most people are gonna. It's really your intrinsic values and your kind of knowledge and the way that you're framing how you want to do your work builds your Haltung. So it's all of the social experiences, your personal experiences. It can include your religious values if you have them. It can, spiritual views. All of these things kind of go in to build who you are, and who you are then you add into this soup your professional views and what you've been taught professionally and what you believe about what you've been taught professionally. And it all gets very convoluted, which is why we use one pretty word, Haltung. So you take this Haltung and you sort of apply it to this philosophy, and I think that becomes a nice circle where this philosophy of empowerment and dialogue inherent in social pedagogy then becomes a part of your Haltung, which immediately moves into your social work, right? It immediately becomes part of who you are as a social worker or a caregiver or any number of professions which fall into social pedagogy.
Yeah, and I did some training on that in the council, just a session really, and people really gave us good feedback, because I think it was a bit like what I personally felt it was what was missing, because I feel like a lot of the time they say that we need to reflect and do these things, but then it's kind of like giving space to have a session where you are reflecting with other people and like celebrating more of the positives of what you're doing, and looking at those small wins with people, like looking at the positive outcomes that you've achieved.
Right.
We did that, and I think we used the Haltung and then thought about what wrinkles your Haltung. So what bothers you in terms of your values, like what is it about certain things that you're doing that bothers you? And it sort of opened up that dialogue, yeah. And then there was we were talking about how personal values then align with your professional values, and people were like really open to it, and they said it did remind them of the reasons they came into practice and how they felt, either they were doing what they came in for or they weren't. And it's just opening up those interesting discussions really, and I really enjoyed it.
That's actually really interesting. What would be interesting is a seminar on finding your Haltung.
Yeah.
Like maybe just like an hour or something to kind of help people grasp this very fluid and floaty concept of what this is. But I think I love that, what wrinkles your Haltung. I think that absolutely pulls back into what is social pedagogy and how does that link to our practice. And I don't just say social care, because I think absolutely foster carers, I think, have their own kind of level of social pedagogy that I think every foster carer, or in the US we say foster parents, I think they alone could stand for a little bit of education in social pedagogical concepts and methodologies, because it is a method of practice. But when we go back to this kind of philosophy, if you're just looking at the tree, you're saying, communication, group work, concepts of children, these are life space, empowerment, they're such important words that I think we are missing, especially those that I read off, when we get into really methodological applications of care, whether it's social work or other care, adult care, child care, any level of care.
Just anything. Yeah. And I know that that's what Ali Gardner's doing, because she sent me a presentation she was doing.
I love Ali.
I know I do. It's why I keep bringing her up. But she sent me something that she was doing, and she was speaking to carers. And I feel like that's it. I just think that there's so many people doing such essential work, and I think it's empowering to know that what you're doing has meaning, and it's like just unpicking it and see how it applies. So maybe this is what we could do. We could do another video, get a few people together and just talk about that one specific thing. Would you be up for it?
Sure. Oh, that'd be a blast.
Yeah, and at least we've got it recorded then, and then anyone can access it, and I can start sharing that out.
No, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, right, well, I think we'll finish there, and we'll just say more to come, really.
Okay, more to come.
More to come.
If you enjoyed the video, please can you like and subscribe and press the bell if you'd like to be updated when I put out more videos. Thank you.